everything that Freeman has ever experienced will prepare him for the adventure that lies ahead.
Sit down.
I think there's been some sort of mistake.
Your brain contains data necessary to get me and my friends home.
I'm just a kid.
You are the navigator.
Walt Disney Pictures presents a new adventure fantasy.
Ah, movie magic and adventure. Isn't it great? Well, movie makers have really progressed from the limited special effects they could create in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Those have given way to the more sophisticated and computer-aided effects that we see today. To help deliver that fantasy to the screen, special effects artists have come to depend on models. That's right, models. And some of the most complex and intriguing models are the ones employed by special effects artists in movies being produced today. Later on in today's show, we're going to meet Gary Gutierrez. He's the gentleman who supervised the special effects for the movies The Right Stuff and Top Gun. Our exhibit would be incomplete without some form of fantasy transportation. So we're going to build the Star Trek Enterprise and use it to compare with the models in Hollywood's finest films. The next feature's about to start. So let's go to the museum and begin building the Star Trek Enterprise.
The greatest hope against the threat of nuclear war is Superman.
Model building requires patience, skill, creativity, and imagination. Those attributes are essential to movie makers when they create fantasy worlds through their use of models. When we construct models, like the ones around me, we need to be imaginative and sometimes develop new techniques so that we can achieve the desired results. Ron Cole, our master model maker, is downstairs in the museum workshop, ready to share with us his creative ideas on model building as we construct the Star Trek Enterprise. Well, it looks like we're going to be really off to deep space today as we build the Star Trek Enterprise. Ron, what kind of progress are you making on the model?
Well, I'm just preparing the primary hull for painting.
Okay, now what are you doing with the modeling knife at this point?
I'm just trying to remove some of the flash and mold marks so that when we put these two pieces together, we can get a better joint and better fit.
Oh, I remember. The flash is the plastic that oozes out between the two joints in a mold, and you have to remove that with a modeling knife so that you don't paint that and then you have to scrape it off later. That's a good tip. Ron, can I give you a hand in the spray painting?
Sure, why don't you go over there and get some flat black paint?
Okay, I will. But Ron, I don't understand flat black. Isn't this like a 90? It's all white model. Why would we want to spray painting on this model black?
Well, here, why don't you hold this up to the light?
All right, what am I going to see here?
Move your hand behind it.
All right, I am. Oh, I can see my hand through there. Well, what's so important about that? Who cares?
Well, I'm going to be taking some pictures of this later on, so I want to have this assembly, because it's thin, be very opaque.
Oh, I understand. Well, that's an important tip to keep in mind. We're going to spray paint our models. We want to make sure we don't see through them. One of the techniques we're going to use, spray paint the back to give it that opaqueness. Okay, what are we going to do first?
Well, let's put some paper down.
Oh, okay, great. Let me come around and give you a hand. So we just have the old morning paper here. This is great. It protects our workbench at the same time. All right, there's the spray paint. What are you going to do first?
Oh.
All right.
You don't have to be too careful with it because no one's really going to see it. Just as long as you get a good, reasonably good coat.
No, even still, I see you're taking your time to make sure you go through there and you don't get any runs. Let me give it a try. So just spray paint here, and it's a good thing we're in a well-ventilated area here, Ron, because this spray paint leaves off some fumes. So make sure you leave a window open or, again, have a well-ventilated area. Okay, I'm done. But it has to dry. You want to put them aside? What do we do?
Why don't you put those aside? I've got some that are dry over here.
All right, I'll get them ready here. All right, what are you bringing over here? Oh, you got the other two pieces dry now. Can we just glue those right together now?
Well, I've got to scrape off all the areas where the two pieces have to glue together. There can't be any paint because you don't get a good glue joint. So I'm going to scrape some of these off here.
Again, just using the modeling knife?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have to do the other side also?
Yep, both sides have to be done.
Let me give it a hand. Let me give it a try here. I'll get a modeling knife also. I'm going to spray and just scrape off my edge. Yeah. You know what's nice about when you have this spray painted like this and you go to scrape it, it's so easy to see because it's black on white, and when we scrape, the white just comes through. You know exactly how much paint you took off. Okay, well mine's done, and I see you already had some of the other ones already done. We have to make sure they're all done that way or it won't work. Okay, what are you going to do now?
Well, I'm going to coat both sides of this with some liquid cement.
Okay. I see you're using the liquid cement. That's the good stuff to use?
Yeah, any kind of liquid cement will do for this.
Okay. Do you always use the applicator like that, Ron?
Not always. Usually I use a small paintbrush, because usually this is too big for most surfaces, but in something this size you can use this without any problem.
Okay, would it also be good to use the glue pen here too, you think?
Oh, I've never tried that.
Okay, well let me try it on the one end here when we glue these two together, because I've had some great results with the glue pen, and one of the nice things about it is we get to really control how much glue we put on. So I'm just going to put on this one end here to show you how it works here. Okay, mine's ready, Ron.
Okay.
What about you?
Yep.
Okay, let's put them together. You got it?
Yep.
Okay. The big hall's going together. Okay. Now, Ron, I noticed that you have two very large pieces there, and there is not one rubber band on this workbench that's going to be big enough to cover that whole entire thing. What are we going to do?
That's why we use clothespins for this.
Clothespins? This is great. These are just regular self-closing clothespins. And they work as what, like a modeling vise here?
Mm-hmm. Just keep the parts together so they don't separate.
Hey, now here's another household item that you're probably going to have laying around. Look in the laundry basket. There's regular clothespins. You just clip them on like this. Hey, even if you don't have them laying around, what can these cost, Ron? You get 30, 40 in a pack for maybe $2, $3. It's a great little item to have laying around. Okay, should I set this aside to dry here now?
Sure.
All right, I also noticed that you have some of the main engines of the Star Trek Enterprise, and I noticed you have some stuff on them. Can you bring them over here? I want to get a close look at those.
Yeah, sure.
What are you doing with that there?
Well, I'm putting some of this putty on here, body putty, and try to fill the gap between these two pieces when you put them together.
Oh, there's a sinkhole or something in there, or what?
Well, when the two pieces go together, there's always a crack. Now, of course, if this thing existed, there probably would not be a huge crack that would go all around the outside of this thing. So we're going to have to fill that part in.
Oh, okay. Well, you going to put some putty on now?
Sure.
All right, let me see what you're going to do there. Just use the old end of the old nail file. Wow. Now, how long does that stuff take to dry?
Well, different putties take a different length, different times drying.
Okay, but
But just check the back of the package on various ones, and I'll tell you about. One tip to keep in mind is don't sand it or file it down until you know it's dry, because if you sand it beforehand, then it'll continue drying after you sand it, and you'll get a sink where the filler shrinks.
Putty it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see that you're puttying that there. That's going to take a while to dry. Is the other one ready to go?
Okay.
I want to see what you're going to do with this once it's done.
Let me get some water.
Okay, what do you use the water for?
Well, we use the water because in our sanding or filing, we don't want to get any of the plastic or shavings from the filler jamming up our sandpaper or our files.
So you just use water.
Yeah. Sometimes you might want to mix a little soap in with it too. It wouldn't hurt, but not too much.
Ah, I see what you're doing there. Yeah, that's great.
When you're using a file like this, not so much with a piece of sandpaper, but when you're using a file, make sure you keep it rolling back and forth. Don't file a flat spot.
Let me give that a try. I want to give it a you water it up for me. Can I do it?
Sure, here.
I just put the water in there like this. Now you say when I don't want to sand like straight. I want to keep moving it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, I have another question here for you. Since you handed me this piece, I noticed that there is a line down in through here that pops up. What is that, and how do I get rid of that?
Well, that could work to your advantage. If you were to not add any putty to that at all, just go over with some sandpaper or a file. You might be able to get away with just sanding that whole line off.
So what is this line called here?
Well, that's a ridge line, and if you're lucky, you use enough glue, and putting the two parts together, you can get that when the glue, the soft plastic and the glue squirts up and causes that line. So you may not even need any filler in some cases.
Now listen, Ron, over in here, I noticed that there's the putty goes down inside these little lines. Now, how do you get that putty out of there? With a file or what?
Well, you can use a file if you have one small enough, but what I use is the backside of an X-Acto knife. I'll just put it in the line and work.
Oh,
like
so you
this.
just take it right out of there like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another fine tip where the modeling knife really comes in handy for us. Wow. And that you're pushing it from the backside so it doesn't scribe in there.
It pushes the material off to either side. When you're through, just give it a little
see.
light sanding to get rid of the ridges on either edge.
Oh, okay. I also noticed that you have one of the main pieces of the model sitting there, the secondary hull, and you have the elevator section there. What are you going to do with that now? I see you already have it puttied out.
Yeah, well, before I do any more work on this, I got to put these two parts together.
Okay, I see it's not fitting correctly. Let me take a look at that. Yeah, what we have here is a situation where when Ron dry fits the pieces, they don't sit down perfectly. Now, what are you going to do in a case like this?
Well, you got to use your own judgment in something like this and just trying to figure out what is the problem and why doesn't it fit. And just, once you figure that out, experiment in removing material. Like, personally, I think it's this little notch here.
So you say, personally, you feel that's that notch, but if it isn't, you can always go back and refile or cut down some more.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's great. It looks like you have your work really cut out for you here, Ron. And while you continue to work on the Star Trek Enterprise to get the pieces ready for gluing, fitting, and painting, we're going to go visit a special effects director to see how models are actually used in the movies. We're here at one of the studios of Colossal Pictures, where we're going to talk to Gary Gutierrez, special effects and film director. Gary, welcome to Adventures in Scale Modeling.
Thank you.
Gary, what is the role of the special effects director?
Well, to create illusions, mainly, to serve the director's vision for his picture and create the illusions that he needs to have made.
And what do the models provide for you as the special effects director?
Well, they're a way of simulating aspects of the real world in a size and a scale that's more manageable for certain kinds of circumstances that may be impractical for one reason or another in production. Something maybe unsafe to do full scale, or maybe too expensive or impractical in some way, and models or a more manageable scale in which to create some of those kinds of things.
Now over here we have some really beautiful models and they're very full scale. How are these used in the film?
These models were used in Top Gun because there was a great deal of aerial photography in Top Gun, actual air-to-air photography, but a lot of the action that was called for by the script was either too dangerous to do, putting pilots into flat spins, or their planes blowing up, or the wing blowing up, or too expensive, like firing missiles. So all those things became part of our job to create with models.
Now these are some of the most largest and beautifully detailed models I've ever seen. Gary, what determines the amount of detail and the actual scale, since we have several different scales here?
Well, it depends on what the shot requires. In one case, the small F-104 model was used in wide-angle shots of a flat spin. We literally took this up on an 80-foot tower and threw it off like a frisbee, and it would spin, and we followed it with high-speed cameras, and that gave us the wide shots. This was an off-the-shelf model kit that we made up about 30 of these because we destroyed a lot of them. But other models had to be fuller scale because explosions don't look real unless they have a certain mass to them. And so we had to work in a much larger scale to make the explosions realistic.
That's amazing. We spend a lot of time building our models, and these guys stand here blowing them up. Gary, I see we have just a piece of a model here. This is a wing. What is this?
Yeah.
What did you use?